Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth of Motor City Madmouth, and here we are, Hump Day. And what do we have? We have football, and who do we have it with? The Motor City Madmouth and his KG veteran rider, Steve Balestrieri. Steve, welcome back to the big show, our big show.
It is our big show, but before we get going, what exactly do you have on that head of yours tonight?
Well, underneath I have some hair, but if you really look at it close, okay, it's a hat for the Florida Atlantic University Owls.
And why are we wearing that?
Because on Saturday, I got to see the FAU Owls take on the Charlotte 49ers over at FAU Stadium and actually got to see a football game in person. My goodness.
I know it sounds strange saying that this year, doesn't it?
It really, really does. I mean, the last event that I covered was out in Arizona, March 11th of 2020, when the Dodgers played the Brewers over at Camelback Ranch. And that game, obviously, there was rain. I think it was called after like 6 or 7 innings. And that was the last event that we saw before the COVID-19 outbreak rocked the whole sports world. So for me, to be able to cover this FAU game with my lovely wife, Candy, who takes pictures, and they are so nice to me. They stuck me in a corner all by myself. And there's 5 other people in the first row. I was so privileged to be in a corner. I really loved it. I can't catch COVID-19 next to a wall. It ain't going to listen to me. It don't care. It doesn't matter. I like being in a corner. This is no longer a caged lion. It was good. Good stuff. Yes, real football in front of me.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. And FAU, by the way, did win the football game. They ended up scoring 21 unanswered points to win the football game. So go figure. I'm not going to get any scores. It didn't make any difference what the score was to me. The score was, at least I got to see the darn thing in person. That was good enough for me.
There you go.
We're going to go from college football to what we always do on Wednesday. We're going to talk about the National Football League. So with that said, some guy hit the unemployment line. His name is Bill O'Brien. You know him all too well, but up in the Massachusetts area. Once upon a time, he was an assistant coach for Bill Belichick. Once upon a time, he was a head coach of the Penn State Nittany Lions. By the way, I did actually meet Bill O'Brien when they went ahead and took on Wisconsin over in Madison. And he's been replaced by Romeo Crennel as the new coach of the Houston Texans. O'Brien leads the Texans 52-48. But the bigger mark that he left was he was arguing with J.J. Watt before the firing. My goodness, it's bad enough to ship DeAndre Hopkins out there. Damian Clowney doesn't want to play for you and get rid of all these good players. But Bill O'Brien, well, I guess he won't have to worry about COVID-19 testing because he's done.
He's cooked. And we kind of had that feeling. We've been talking about this on this show a couple of times. We thought his seat was getting mighty warm. And with that team going 0-4, you knew it was simply a matter of time with him. I mean, it was just a matter of time. And then when we found out, that he was feuding with J.J. Watt, J.J. Watt's the franchise there. I mean, it's probably him and Deshaun Watson. And Bill O'Brien comes in a real distant third between those two guys. And, I still can't get over that they traded Hopkins. I mean,
I can't either.
I can't wrap my head around that for the life of me. I still can't figure it out. With the quarterback that you have to trade that guy, and it's no coincidence now that they're 0-4.
Come on, seriously? How do you trade DeAndre Hopkins? And then not only to trade him, to try to make it look like it's personal in the media, to do that as well. To me, you don't argue with a guy who's going to be getting a statue outside of that stadium. J.J. Watt is iconic in that area. Jeez, oh, Pete, is Bill O'Brien stupid? What kind of Kool-Aid is he on? Is he drinking a mudslide? Because he definitely slid down the wrong place, that's for sure.
Yeah, and, like you said, I mean, what J.J. Watt did for that community after the issues they had down there in Houston after those storms, I mean, he's an icon there. He's an icon in that city. He's an icon with that team and in that locker room. And for him to get into a shouting match with his coach tells you that O'Brien's lost that locker room.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, Bill O'Brien to me. Now let's talk about firing coaches, Mitch. Because I know that I've seen a lot of them. One of the most interesting ones that ever happened in my lifetime covering the NFL was when the Detroit Lions fired Darrell Rogers, who was never liked there to begin with, because he left Michigan State prematurely to go to Arizona State, but they brought on Wayne Fonts. That actually worked out well because Wayne Fonts will go down in Detroit as a trivia question as the last coach to ever win a playoff game there when the Lions stumped the Dallas Cowboys 38-6 in 1991. But, so sometimes these moves work out. Why am I bringing this example up? Romeo Crennel has a 12-game window here, okay, to try to see if he can earn that job. I mean, let's face it, he's a minority coach right now, so he's certainly going to get the opportunity to, you have your minority hiring, so to speak, under the Rooney Rule. So he has a chance to earn that job, and he has a chance to earn it early and try to restore a little bit of camaraderie and so forth in that locker room. Can Romeo Crennel, because he's a former Patriots guy as well, Steve, okay, be the guy that gets his team on track and steady the ship a little bit?
Yeah, I think he can steady it for the short term, but I mean, I think Romeo is an outstanding defensive coach. I think he's a great coordinator. I don't think he's a very good head coach. He's had opportunities in the past. Maybe this time it'll work for him. I know that he has a lot of respect of the players that he coaches. Everyone who plays for Romeo just loves him. I think he'll right the ship for the short term, but I think they'll end up hiring another head coach. They'll probably go for an offensive guy. That seems to be the trend these days, going more offense. And I think they'll probably go for somebody younger that's going to be hopefully around for a while, unlike some of the rest of the coaches that the Texans have had.
Yeah, the one guy that I've heard mentioned, Steve, is Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. And I know that it's not a matter of if and when Eric Bieniemy gets hired. He will get a job at some point. He's certainly one of the hot names out there. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a crack at that job. That's for sure.
It blows me away that he doesn't already have a head coaching job in this league. Because, I mean, Andy Reid, he was talking about him after the game the other night, and he was raving about, what a great football mind he is. Players that play for him love him. I just can't understand why this guy's not a head coach already.
Well, think about it for a moment, Steve. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs hosted the Houston Texans, and Eric Bieniemy's on the other sideline or in the box. If you can't get a close-up look than that, tell me what the words close-up look is, because I must be taking a dumb pill right there, partner. Because Eric Bieniemy, to me, I think would be a logical choice. You got to remember, like you said, you got Deshaun Watson there. Who are you going to find as your White House? Well, whoever the new general managers will have to get that situation straight too. But focus on finding a way to have, a united locker room and build around a quarterback. You just paid a boatload of money, and I think Eric Bieniemy checked a lot of those boxes, SB.
Right, and when they had Hopkins and Will Fuller, now Fuller's had obviously lots of injury issues, but when he's healthy and those two are combined, that offense was awfully tough to stop, because I think each one of those guys, especially when Fuller's healthy, you can make a point, but both of them are kind of number one receivers. And I thought that, getting rid of Hopkins just doesn't make any sense not for a running back. And I don't know. I've been harping on this for months, but I'm going to continue to do it because I just don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. And I think that might have sealed, Bill O'Brien's fate in the long term back then.
But Steve, it's not that he traded him for a running back. You're talking about a running back that has a lot of tread worn out.
Yep.
A running back's one thing. If you felt you had a running back that could be a playmaker and could really tear it up, but David Johnson's better days, Steve, are behind him.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about the NFL. They may move the Saints and the Chargers to Indianapolis due to Hurricane Delta. No, we're not talking about Delta Airlines. We're talking about Hurricane Delta. This situation in New Orleans, I remember a long time ago when I covered the New Orleans Bowl, between Florida Atlantic University, by the way, the hat, okay, and Memphis. I saw the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina out there, and I pray for those people out in New Orleans that they certainly are, that they're safe first and foremost. In fact, the game that I'm actually, I'm not going to be out in Mississippi, but FAU takes on Southern Mississippi as well. And Willie Taggart had a great sense of humor today when I was talking to him on his call. Is, well, we're prepared for a game, but if there's anybody that's used to cancellation, it's definitely him. And by the way, Frank Gore Jr. plays for Southern Miss just as well, just in case you didn't know that. Now you do. We give information on this broadcast as we do all of them, especially this one. But think about it. You know, I guess when you talk about the move to Indianapolis' stadium is pretty close to the hotel, and there's a lot of hotel space. So I think it's a very logical move. And in this case, you don't have to worry about fans. There aren't any fans around anywhere to sell any tickets. So it seems like a move that makes a whole lot of sense.
It does. And, this morning I was watching the film of that hurricane as it hit Mexico and down in Cancun. And that was it. I mean, it was scary. And now it's gathering steam and heading toward New Orleans. I mean, I think it's a smart move. There's no way that they'd probably be able to play that game, especially with the team trying to get in there with that storm coming. It makes more sense. Move it back up in the Midwest. And without any fans there, it's not a big deal. It's not like, you're losing your home field advantage. So
that's true. Good point, Steve. All right, let's talk about the Patriots without Cam Newton, COVID-19. They lost 26-10 to the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, for those individuals that wonder what life would have been like after Tom Brady, I'll throw these numbers at you, and then you guys can draw your own conclusions, okay? Brian Hoyer, goes 15 of 24, 130 yards, no touchdowns and interception. And the guy that was supposed to succeed, Tom Brady, Jared Stidham, 5 of 13, 60 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. My goodness, Patriots fans, aren't you glad that you got the Cam Kool-Aid? Because those are your alternatives, and that would have steered the Patriots 5-11, 6-10, and you got Cam. So why don't you put all that in perspective, Steve?
Well, it was interesting because the Patriots had a tremendous game plan defensively. They held Kansas City to just 2 field goals through. I think Kansas City scored their first touchdown with like 45 seconds left in the third quarter. So, they played fantastic defensive. Actually, it was the same game plan they used in 2013 against the Denver Broncos, where they put 8 defensive backs on the field and dared Peyton Manning to check out of it and let him run the football, no Sean Moreno. And that game had like over 200 yards. But I thought they had a tremendous defensive game plan. They ran the ball very effectively. They ended up running for, I think it was 185 yards, but Brian Hoyer was awful. Mm-hmm. His first 4 passes sailed way over. I mean, a lot of fans were upset with Ryan Izzo because he didn't jump for a ball. I was like, if he was 10 feet tall, he could have jumped that high. That's how far over his head he threw it. And the second one he did like that, it was an interception. He threw it right to the deep safety. And then Hoyer made 2, blunders. If Stidham had made this mistake, you would chalk it up to being inexperienced, even though this is his second season. It was the first real game he's played in. But Hoyer, right before the half, clock's running, there's 15 seconds left. They send all the receivers out into the end zone. Nobody's open. So an experienced quarterback that's been in the league 12 years knows you just throw the ball away. You live another day. You kick the field goal. You go into halftime tied. Right. He holds on to it. He gets sacked. The clock runs out. They get no points. And then he does it again in the third quarter. The second possession they had, he drove them down the field. He actually made a couple of nice throws on that one. They get down inside the 10-yard line. I believe they were on the 5 or the 6. Same thing. He holds on to the ball way too long. Yeah. Chiefs sack him. They strip the ball away. They recover. 2 possessions inside the 15-yard line. They came away with 0 points. And then they drop 2 gift interceptions. Pat Mahomes doesn't make many mistakes. And on the Chiefs' first possession of the game, he overthrew Kelsey, and he threw it right to Devin McCourty. and McCourty didn't hold on. And they ended up kicking a field goal. And then in the fourth quarter, he threw another one. He tried to force it into coverage from the 39. He threw it down around the goal line. J.C. Jackson had perfect position, had an easy interception, and he dropped it, and the Chiefs ended up scoring a touchdown. There's another 10 points. You add those up, and there's your difference in the game. You know, I thought the Patriots, they made uncharacteristic mistakes. They were terrible at situational football, something that Belichick prides himself on. But the Chiefs did what they had to do, and on a night where they kept Mahomes pretty much in check. They had an opportunity to steal a game away from the Super Bowl champs, and they let it slip away. Now they're 2-2. They're 2 games behind Buffalo. Cam Newton's out, and now they lost their best defensive player today.
Wow. No kid. Wow.
Stephon Gilmore come up on COVID.
Yeah, that doesn't count a lot of the other guys that left earlier when they checked out early in the game. So we'll go to an old friend of ours named Gomer Pyle, okay? And I'll use this Gomer Pyle reference for Brian Hoyer. Shame, shame, shame when you make those kind of mistakes and you've been in the league for a long time.
Right. And then when they brought in Stidham, I mean, he let him down for a touchdown. His first interception was a pick six, but that was not his fault. Right. He threw it to Julian Edelman right on the sideline, hit him right in the hands, and he was wide open. And Edelman has been having trouble with drops, and he bobbled it right over his head, right into the waiting arms of Tyrann Mathieu, and he ran it back in for a touchdown. That one wasn't on Stidham, but his second one was. He had Damiere Byrd wide open in the end zone. He way underthrew the football. Right. And it was easily picked off in the end zone. If he throws that ball where it's supposed to go, that would have been a Patriot touchdown. It's back to a 3-point game. But, Stidham has a long way to go. But honestly, if Newton can't play on Sunday, and it doesn't look like he will, I'd go with Stidham at this point rather than Hoyer.
Well, sure, you might as well give the kid his reps at that particular point. You know, they were prepared to go with him anyways to begin with before Cam came into the picture. So
right, and then he got hurt the second day of training camp, so he missed a lot of training camp. He hurt his hip and he was out. But at this point, if Cam can't play, let's see what Stidham's got. I mean, I'm not going to base his entire future on coming in cold on one game, because basically they didn't find out Newton wasn't going to play until Friday night. So the practices were all over for the week. You know, none of the quarterbacks other than Newton got any of the reps all week. They had to change their entire, install for the game. So I'm not going to, did both of them play horrible? Absolutely. But I'm not going to hold their feet to the fire overly for that game. Let's see what happens on Sunday. I'd start Stidham.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah, give Jared Stidham his reps and see what happens. And like you say, now that he's had a week of practice, by all means, you should. So, all right, well, we'll talk about a team that who knows how many reps they're going to have, and this is not looking good. This is getting uglier by the minute, Steve. The Tennessee Titans Week 5 game against Buffalo is now in jeopardy. The NFL and the NFLPA is investigating whether or not they violated COVID-19 protocols. As it stands right now, 20 players, including personnel, are right now dealing with the COVID Kool-Aid. And so are we going to have a forfeit, or are they going to start forfeit for the 2 games? I know they had one already postponed. I believe it was with the Steelers. Is that right?
Right. That's been rescheduled for later in October.
Right. And so do they forfeit those 2 games, or do they penalize for draft choices? I mean, this is the only team right now, Steve, it looks like there's a major outbreak, and they're breaking all the rules that everybody's told them not to. I mean, at what point Steve, do the Titans get it? Do you make them forfeit 2 games? They're 3-0, and make them 3-2, or the next step is you lose a draft choice or 2 and get these guys to start thinking, you know what? You're going to pay one way or the other, and the NFL doesn't have a problem nailing you big time, especially when you consider what happened in New Orleans with that Bounty Gate thing where Sean Payton got settled for a while. So the NFL...
Tom Brady got suspended 4 games for air.
Right, exactly. So tell me, what would be the appropriate punishment, Steve, Okay, for the Titans, do they forfeit 2 games or do you lose draft choices? Because right now, the NFL has a major logistical headache here, and so do the NFLPA. They're worried about watching all their guys, and you got a lot of people affected by this complete outright negligence.
Yeah, it's. I think if they forfeited, it would just be this week because they've already rescheduled that Steelers game for later, and they've tweaked the schedule for everyone around that one.
Okay.
So I kind of think if they do force the forfeit, it would just be this week's against Buffalo.
Okay.
But now we're looking at 3 players in the Patriots now have COVID. Cam Newton, Stephon Gilmore, and practice squad player Bill Murray, not the comedian. Yeah, Bill Murray's a defensive tackle. He has it now. And now a couple of players from the Raiders have COVID now. So, I'm wondering if they just put a halt to the schedule for 2 weeks, let all the teams get healthy again, and then retweak their, COVID protocols and start up again. And I think if any team runs into an issue, then it's definitely going to be forfeits.
Yeah, are you surprised the Raiders are having issues? And once upon a time, these guys were out there partying without masks out in Vegas for crying out loud. Right. Why would any be surprised that the Raiders, the new team in town, is already getting into trouble over on the Strip without masks? And now they have it as well. And by the way, their coach already had it, and now he's forced to wear his mask and cover up his blonde head with a visor. So I don't know. So you're thinking. So tell me, where do you think Tennessee should go with this? Forget about what I think. Forfeiting might be a little premature, but maybe they might be forced to do that. But
they might be, because at this point, you can't keep rescheduling other teams' games because it's going to reach that point where you either have to extend the schedule or you end up just calling a halt for a couple of weeks. I don't know if they'd be willing to do that at this point. But, if you call a halt for 2 weeks, let everybody get healthy, then you're starting from scratch again. And if a team runs into something where they can't play, you're going to forfeit the game.
Yeah, it almost seems like that makes sense.
But I think the Titans are going to get hammered because it came out later this afternoon. I don't know if you saw that, where 20 of the guys, when they met for a practice when they were supposed to be self-quarantining.
Oh, I think I heard something about that. Okay, but go ahead and elaborate on that.
Yeah, I read something about that where 20 of the players got together and they held an impromptu practice while they were supposed to be quarantining, and the league found out about it. So now they're investigating that. If they find out that was the case, I think Tennessee's going to get hammered hard.
Yeah. That hammered hard might lead to exactly what you're implying, my friend, and that's forfeiting the game if you're going to do that.
And draft picks.
So there you go. I don't be surprised if they give them double jeopardy there and nail them twice. I think you're right. I wouldn't be surprised to see them lose a game and picks at some point or another. They got to get it figured out. When you're not following protocols and you're practicing when you're not supposed to do. I mean, MLB got humbled when earlier in the year we wondered whether that season was going to take place. Now we're in the playoffs. Thankfully, we are getting further along when you have to learn the hard way. So, yeah, an interruption in the season. How long did you think that the NFL could go without any problems anyway? I didn't think it was going to go that long. I think they went further than I thought they would right now. But, the more and more this thing continues to play out, it's not good.
Right. And, I thought the league did a really good job because I've talked to the guys down in Foxborough. It's like going into someplace like NASA now. They have so many protocols and, areas where they're keeping everything at bay. And it's like that everywhere. So I think they did a good job with that. But I think they made a huge blunder on Monday because Cam Newton comes up on Friday. They know that the incubation period for this is at least 3 to 5 days. Some scientists put it up to 14. So then they insist on making the Patriots fly in 2 different airplanes because they separated everyone who was close to Cam Newton in the last couple of days.
Really?
And they made them fly on a different plane. They get to Kansas City. They play the Chiefs. And after the game, Mahomes is hugging Stephon Gilmore.
Oh, jeez.
He has a pregnant girlfriend at home, his fiance.
Oh, wow.
And him and Gilmore are talking at midfield, and like a lot of players do. And, there's a lot of respect there because Mahomes is who he is, and Gilmore's the reigning defensive player of the year. So here's these two guys hugging at midfield, and now Gilmore the next day comes up positive for COVID-19, and he may have infected Mahomes.
Well, that would be about the biggest nightmare scenario the NFL could ever hope for if that happens, for sure.
Right, and the Chiefs had their own player that came up over the weekend, the practice squad quarterback. But again, he's in the meeting room with the offensive players and the quarterbacks. The NFL shouldn't have played that game. They should have waited and rescheduled it for later in the year. I thought that was a big mistake, and hopefully it doesn't cost him Patrick Mahomes.
I hope not either. Well, let's talk about another player that's not going to get sacked for COVID. He's getting sacked for bad play, and that guy that I'm referring to is the fact that Washington promoted Dwayne Haskins to third string. Kyle Allen is now the starter. Haskins has a 3-8 career record with 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. His completion is under 60%. Now let's talk about Kyle Allen for a moment, okay? In 2019, under Coach Ron Rivera, Steve, he threw for 3,322 passing yards for 17 touchdowns and 16 interceptions. And I think what adds insult to injury is that Alex Smith is the backup. And there's a guy that broke his leg and suffered all the surgery. The fact that even Alex Smith is even dressed, to me, with Washington is a major miracle in itself that he still wants to play, let alone the backup. But Dwayne Haskins, do you think that this will destroy his confidence, or is it a wake-up call for him? And of course, the familiarity factor, Steve, with Kyle Allen with Carolina plays in. So what are your overall feelings on this one?
I think Haskins needs to get traded, get out of Washington. As you know, that place is toxic anyway. I'm nothing against Ron Rivera. I think Ron Rivera is a tremendous coach, and eventually he'll get the ship righted there. But that's just a bad place to be. And Haskins wasn't Rivera's guy.
That's true.
He didn't draft him, so he wasn't his guy. So he doesn't have that built-in kind of that leeway that if a coach drafts a guy in a first rounder, he's going to give him a little bit more leeway than another guy who's walking in the door. I still can't believe Alex Smith is the starter, though. And the other thing, you mentioned Kyle Allen played for Rivera in Carolina. Ron Rivera was touting big time Cam Newton this year when the Patriots signed him. Right. And my question was, if you have this opinion on Cam and he's so great and he's always, why didn't you bring him with you to Washington instead of Kyle Allen? I don't know the answer to that. We might never know that one, but maybe he thinks Kyle Allen's going to be the guy. I don't know. I don't see it.
The only thing I could give you on that, Steve, is that he wasn't sure about Cam Newton's health as a lot of people were. Remember, Cam Newton may have come in with a high price tag, and the Patriots picked him up pretty inexpensive, and that's how they like to do it. How much was Cam demanding financially at the time, and was healthy enough to be able to fulfill? That's the only thing that comes to my mind. I don't know what otherwise. But Kyle Allen, well, I mean, we'll find out. But Alex Smith, you never know. He might see the football field. But I think you're right. There's no question about the fact that Washington is toxic. And if Ron Rivera did not draft him, I think he felt in his mind he had to give Dwayne Haskins a fair chance the first few weeks to see what he could do under his coaching staff. And then that way, remember, he didn't have it. Nobody had preseason, so it's not like you can gauge this kid based on 4 preseason games. You had even live game action too, and I think that's probably why Haskins even got 4 games. And as a lot of coaches will say, Steve, I've seen enough, and that obviously leads to where this man's sitting holding a clipboard on the bench. So.
Yeah, and it's tough because, I mean, you look at the players around Haskins in his time in Washington. They're not scaring opposing defensive coordinators. I mean, he hasn't had a stellar cast around him. I think the best thing that they could do for him right now is to trade him someplace, let him sit the rest of this year, learn the offense of where he's going to be, and give him a chance to compete. I think he's got the talent, but like you said right at the outset, you wonder about his confidence level at this point.
Right. Well, yeah,
He's lost more in Washington than he lost in all those years in Ohio State.
it's true. Well, everybody that goes to Washington is going to lose more than they lost in college, especially a primo like that. I think they have Terry, was it McLaurin, as
Mhm.
wide out for Washington. It's not like he had a familiar target. The problem is, even though you have a familiar target, doesn't mean the coaching staff, one, believes in you, and number two, that you have a toxic environment, which he happens to have both. So I wish Dwayne Haskins well, but I didn't quite like the way things worked out when he played Michigan. But since he's getting paid to play ball, and the Wolverines haven't beaten Ohio State in a while, won't hold that against him. But I hope that Dwayne Haskins does indeed get a fresh start. So, all right, let's talk about some football games last week. How about that, my friend? All right, ready?
Let's do it.
All right. New Orleans Saints 35, Detroit 29. The New Orleans Saints run off 5 straight touchdowns. Matt Patricia, like you said, gets toasted. Then again, I'm surprised he hasn't been fired by now. But, 35 unanswered points. I don't care about the double-digit lead. The Lions are known for giving those up. And I don't consider 14-0 early in the first quarter as anything to really worry about a double-digit lead. That was just double jeopardy for Matt Patricia.
Well, they got off to a good start, and there was at least some feeling there that, hey, if they keep this up, they'll be in this game. And then as quickly as they got up, it seemed like, I was watching another game, and I looked back at the score, and I was like, is that a misprint? Are they behind now? It seemed like it happened really quickly. And then Patricia's press conference, I don't know if you watched it afterwards. It wasn't good. Yeah, he was talking about how he had to fix a lot of things when he got there. Well, the Lions were above 500 when he got there. They're nowhere close to 500 right now, and they don't seem to be trending in the right way.
Not see his press conferences, my friend, but I do get the transcripts, and even though I don't hear it, see these things called glasses. I read it well enough to know exactly what you're talking about. So the written word and the verbal word is verbatim for sure. Yeah, that's a bad situation. 35 unanswered points to lose. Then they have that 2-point conversion, and I think they mishandled the clock toward the very end in terms of time management as well. And I know Matt Stafford made a key mistake in the end zone, but I'm not holding that on him. And the team goes ahead and scores 35 unanswered points like they did. They don't deserve to win in the Lions. I picked them last week. Shame on me. I'm probably 0 for 4 with the Lions picks, thinking they'd get toasted in Arizona, and I'm eating humble pie over that one. But, make too many mistakes against Drew Brees and expect to not pay for it in the Lions. Well, I guarantee I won't get it wrong this week because them and the Green Bay Packers have byes, so I can't miss the Lions.
They won't lose this week.
No, they won't. They won't win. But then again, winning hadn't happened a lot. All right, let's go on to another interesting football game, Steve. Cleveland 49, Dallas 38. Baker Mayfield defeats Dak Prescott. And you know what? Before anybody starts labeling this guy a bust, Kevin Stefanski, the former offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, is the one guy who could probably salvage Baker Mayfield. I don't care if Baker's doing the commercials, as long as you're studying that playbook and you have a chance to resurrect your career with a proven offensive coach. And Kevin Stefanski's doing a pretty good job early on. And to put a 49 spot up in Dallas, even though the Cowboys give up a lot of points, got to hand it to Baker Mayfield and the Browns for walking into a place that they go once every 8 years and sending a message that, you know what, we may not have met our expectations last year. Odell Beckham Jr., I think, had a pretty good game too, and he's used to going and have good games against the Cowboys. So
he scored 3 touchdowns, and that his third one was the backbreaker. I mean, that one was, because the Browns they had got way ahead, and it looked like it was going to be an absolute blowout, and the Cowboys started crawling back a little at a time. They stayed patient. They started scoring some points, and all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute now. we have a ball game, and in Dallas, it seemed like had all the momentum going their way. And then Landry, he put the dagger in him, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He did. Well, I was watching the Lions over at Duffy's, and that was painful watching the New Orleans Saints. So I had the Cowboys and the Browns game behind me. So I was moving my neck back and forth a little to see what was going on in Cleveland. A lot of people projected, though, that would be a high-scoring game. That's for sure.
Yep.
And
It definitely was that. And I mean, for all Jerry Jones talks about Dak Prescott, you can't blame that on him.
no, not at all.
That defense, they couldn't stop Cleveland all game long. Cleveland's running game was very impressive in that.
Well, Kareem Hunt's on that team, so got to hand it to the Browns. They're 3-4. They won 3 out of 4. More power to them. Next game, we alluded to a little bit earlier, Steve, and we'll allude to it again. Minnesota 31, Houston 23. The battle of 0-3 teams. One became 1-3. The other one became 0-4, and the other one meant that the coach went out the door. Yes, rhyme intended this time. Bill O'Brien can do whatever he wants with this time. I'm sure he's going to get paid handsomely to get the heck out of town and argue with his wife, cat, kids, or whatever he's going to argue. But your overall impressions of that football game, 31-23, the Vikings are still have a long ways to go to get straightened out.
Yeah, both teams do. And, if you had told me those teams would be playing in week 4 and both of them would be winless, I wouldn't have believed it. It was a little bit interesting in that game. I just thought that, the Vikings seemed to want it more than the Texans, from the impression I was getting when I watched the tape on that.
Mm-hmm.
And now we know why.
Yeah. Well, I know we've given this game a lot more attention than we normally 0-3, but in the end, Bill O'Brien got fired, and rightfully so. He deserved to. We'll talk about another game that was ironically the same score, 31-3, but this time Seattle went into Miami and beat the Dolphins over, they call it Hard Rock Stadium. I'll always call it Joe Robbie Stadium, but that's my own personal preference. But, I don't think, is it time for Tua? You think it's just time to let Ryan Fitzpatrick, the Harvard boy, continue to man the ship for a while? Because Russell Wilson, I believe the Miami Dolphins, I believe, are 1-3. Their only win occurred against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Mm-hmm. And in that game, I thought Miami played pretty well. They just couldn't finish. I thought Fitzpatrick moved the ball okay on that defense of Seattle's, and I thought Miami played a pretty good game. It was a game I thought they could win because of the way it was playing out. They couldn't make the plays when they needed to. And then I saw this afternoon where, the Dolphins said that a lot of people have been clamoring for Tua, but they said he's not ready. So rather than ruin his confidence, I think if Brian Flores doesn't think he's ready, then don't put him in.
Well, I think the thought process was when they drafted him that they needed to shore up that offensive line anyway. So if indeed that is the logic behind there, then let Ryan Fitzpatrick take the brunt of it and try to shore that offensive line for Tua. And, of course, you don't want to run the risk of injury anyways. There's a guy that walked in there and slipped to 5 for a reason because they were concerned about his medical well-being. So I think there's no question that Ryan Fitzpatrick is a good quarterback. And we'll see how the whole thing plays out. We'll talk about those.
I know they have Gesicki, who I really like. I was watching him in the game. Oh, yeah. I think he's a really good player. And for a young quarterback, having a tight end is that safety valve that you got to love. And hopefully Tua will get in there before too long, and we'll see what he can do.
Well, in the Lions game, I believe T.J. Hawkinson scored another touchdown too.
Yes, he did.
So
that's my boy. I like Hawkinson.
Oh, I do too. Yeah, that validates your point about the tight end. All right, let's go ahead. Up by 75, the Chargers lose to the Tampa Bay Bucks, 38-31. Tom Brady continues to play good football, and he beat. But I'll tell you what, though, Justin Herbert's looking pretty good for the Chargers as well. Had a pretty entertaining game over in Tampa.
It was. Herbert was. He was playing extremely well. He made a couple of mistakes at the end, but you got to expect that with a young rookie quarterback. They're going to make those mistakes, but I thought he acquitted himself really well. And that defense is coming together for Tampa, and they're aggressive. They were coming after him, but he hung in the pocket. He played real well. But what we saw on Sunday is Tom Brady's getting his comfort level in that offense. And even though they were missing they were missing a key guy, Chris Godwin, and obviously Mike Evans was limited.
And now
When he came back, he made some great catches, and Brady threw 5 touchdown passes to 5 different receivers, and that's when you spread the ball around like that, that gives defensive coordinators fits because you're not keen on one guy.
Well, that's why Brady left there. He didn't feel like New England was giving him enough suitable weapons, and Tampa Bay is certainly equipped to do it. Here, Leonard Fournette's, I don't know, is he out or doubtful for the Thursday night contest? I don't know.
He's out. I think he's out.
That's what I thought. So Tom will have, but the Buccaneers do have some depth at that running back position. With that said, let's go on to the Green Bay Packers, Atlanta Falcons. Green Bay wins that one 30-16 up in Lambeau. Dan Quinn's seat's getting hotter, and Aaron Rodgers is looking awfully good.
Aaron Rodgers seems very, very comfortable in that offense now with LaFleur. Right. He's been picking everybody apart, and I think what you said is Dan Quinn's next. I'd be surprised if he makes it to the halfway point of the season.
Me too. Yeah, and again, Green Bay won't win. They won't lose. If anything, they'll get a little bit healthier, and Aaron Rodgers can just hang out, relax, and just do what he says, relax, at least this weekend. And we talked about the New England-Kansas City game, 26-10. Any other final thoughts on that before we talk about this week's slate of games?
No, I mean, I hit on all the points there. They had opportunities to win. They had a really good defensive game plan. Their defense played, I thought, tremendous. They held Mahomes to 236 yards passing. Mm-hmm. They were dropping 8 guys into coverage, and taking away those short passing lanes that Mahomes likes out in the flat and in the middle. Mm-hmm. And even still, they got some good pressure on him. But the offense without Cam Newton was just non-existent. And even though the running game had a very, very good game, I thought, if you don't have a quarterback that's at least a game manager, you're not going to win.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope Jared Stidham bounces back this week if Cam can't go. He was the guy that they touted all along to be their quarterback, and now he's going to get an opportunity to get some valuable reps. All right, well, speaking of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they take on the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field on Thursday night, the NFC North Division. You know what, Chris Berman, if you're out there listening to this broadcast, I love the NFC North. Okay, you and I being original 6 guys can remember the North Division of the National Hockey League when the Red Wings were there, and I'm glad that Chris Berman keeps the NFC North in play.
Yeah. But I have always loved that one from Chris Berman, and it's good to see him back on ESPN. I like Tampa in this one tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, Nick Foles had a rough game, so everybody's going to sit there and think that Nick Foles, you never know. We might see Trubisky again. I think Matt Nagy may have a headache on his hand, but I used to love it when these teams played twice a year, Tampa Bay and Chicago. I loved it when the Lions used to take on the Buccaneers, and I'm a student at the University of South Florida, so. Yeah,
the old creamsicle uniforms.
Oh, yeah, I know. I heard about those things, that's for sure. Yeah. But they're classics. I never got one of those, but then again, I was never a Buccaneers guy anyhow. But I'll tell you what, I enjoyed covering games at the old Tampa Stadium, that's for sure. One of my the best games I ever covered was, who wouldn't like this, when Barry Sanders wrote for 2 80-yard touchdowns in one game, and the Lions routed the Buccaneers. And I had a lot of great times at the old Tampa Stadium. But, yeah, I'm with you. I think Tampa Bay should be able to beat Chicago, and they're looking awfully good. So, all right, so let's go on to Las Vegas and Kansas City. Tell you what, let's hope that the COVID cases on Las Vegas don't spread and that Patrick Mahomes doesn't have it. But this is a very scary game. I'm not sure what reason why it is scary.
Yeah, I think after kind of a down week and, even though Mahomes ended up with quote-unquote 2 touchdown passes, they were kind of more handoffs. I think Mahomes will be really motivated this week, to go out there. I think he's going to, if everything goes according to plan and the game goes off on time, I think he'll torch the Raiders this week.
Well, let's hope he doesn't have the COVID situation with that thing you were talking about earlier. It's just so weird, Las Vegas and Kansas City, when you and I are so used to Oakland and Kansas City. I guess we're going to have to get used to that a little bit more often, but Las Vegas and
I
Kansas.
know I still can't. I keep saying Oakland when I talk to people about the Raiders. It's going to take a while to get used to.
Well, let me tell you, a lot of people used to do that when they moved to Los Angeles, and the time they moved to Los Angeles, they got used to it. Then they went back to Oakland. And for all you folks that are watching this broadcast, okay, can you keep track of what I'm saying? Oakland, Los Angeles, Las Vegas. If I do that a few times, I'll be really, really tongue-tied. So, but yeah, I think Kansas City will have a relatively easy time against the Raiders for sure. We talked about the Miami Dolphins, and now they're going to the West Coast, and they're going to take on the San Francisco 49ers. You know, I mean, the 49ers, I don't know, Jimmy Garoppolo, I think he's still out. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So,
And they're beat up. I mean, they're missing a lot of people, and it was very obvious on Sunday night when they played the Eagles. Who the Eagles are playing terrible football, but they ended up winning the game. So I think Miami has a puncher's chance in this game. You know, when I looked at this schedule early before they had all those injuries, I thought this would be a rout. But now I'm not so sure. I think Miami has a good shot at this.
I wouldn't put it past them. They certainly need the win, and they've played competitive against a lot of teams. And again, I think, like you mentioned, Steve, that San Francisco appears to be undermanned, so it gives them at least a puncher's chance. So,
Yeah,
all right,
because Mullins will look terrible against the Eagles.
yeah, no, I mean, it'll be interesting. I don't know how much football I really want to watch this weekend, anyways. I really don't care. I've got the weekend off with my wife, for crying out loud. I have a honey-do list and a lot of errands I need to get done. I'm sure I'll get around to watching football. You know, I got to watch football so I can be prepared for our broadcast every Wednesday night.
That's what NFL Game Pass is for.
What's that? Yeah, well, I don't have it like you retired guys from New England that are enjoying your first rodeo in the Sunshine State. But I have no problem with the sports bars. In fact, before I go on to our next football game, my wife and I spent time over at Duffy's here, and there's a point where they allowed 100% capacity in the restaurant, but they backed it up to I think 25%. When a cop walked into one of their franchises and was angry about it, and I think Broward County and Palm Beach County cooler heads prevailed, and they started to section it off and tailed it back a little bit. So I was more at peace when we went on Sunday. But nevertheless, I'm not going there this weekend because I don't have any horse and have any players out there. I have the Packers and Lions to worry about, so I'll be hanging out at home. So with that said, let's talk about the Denver Broncos and New England Patriots, two teams that I've actually seen win Super Bowls. I saw Denver win Super Bowl 33 against the Atlanta Falcons, and I saw your Patriots defeat Philadelphia over in Jacksonville, Super Bowl 39. So 33 and then 39, and have a couple numbers, and 33 is a part of me. With that said, Denver and New England, who you got?
It's going to be difficult for the Patriots because they need better quarterback play than they got on Monday night. I think this is a game they should win. I don't know if Drew Lock is going to be back this week for Denver, but I think the Patriots defense, whoever is quarterbacking for them, they play like they did in Kansas City. They should be able to hold them down enough where they can pull out a rock fight close win.
Yeah, I think the thing that could give Denver a chance to win this game, don't forget you still have Melvin Gordon there too. So
that running game of theirs.
Yeah, so if Denver has a chance to win this football game, they're going to have to do it on the ground until Drew Lock gets back in there. But didn't Brett Rippon, I think he had a pretty good game too last week, didn't he? So maybe there's a hidden gem there that we don't know about in Denver. So I don't know, Steve. I almost call this like a pick'em game, don't you? But Denver and New England?
Yes. I think it's going to be a rock fight. I think it's going to be one of those 20-17 games.
Yeah, I would go along with it. I mean, if you're talking about a pick'em game, knowing that you might be looking at two young quarterbacks, where if you had Locke and you had Cam Newton, I would certainly be more comfortable with the Patriots. Now, my question to you is, what about James White? What have you heard about James White?
James White's back. He actually started tearing up after the game was over when they did, the writers were asking him about his dad. His dad was killed in a car accident a couple of weeks ago. His mother's still in critical condition in Fort Lauderdale. But he's back. He played extremely well against the Chiefs. He's always great out of the backfield.
Yeah.
And, he's one of the leaders in the locker room. I think the players all definitely loved having him back. In fact, Josh McDaniels, after the game on Monday night, he said he told his kids that him and his wife said they told their kids, if you guys turn out to be James White when you're adults, then your mother and I did our job the right way.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yes.
That's
That's what kind of a guy he is in the locker room. He's a fantastic guy, and he's loved in the locker room. And I think having him back was a nice boost for them. It wasn't so good for the rookie J.J. Taylor, who didn't see the field, but having James White back is big for them.
Well, he's a fine player. He's performed in the postseason. Everybody knows he's a multi-threat out of the backfield. He can run the football. So there were
He's a
times
tremendous pass blocker too.
yeah, there were times when I played fantasy football a little bit, and I actually added James White to my roster, and I never had a problem with it because I felt like he was multi-dimensional, and I had no problem. I'm not playing it this year because nobody in their right mind would with all this COVID-19 and all that. Not that I care or like it or I don't. We have a fantasy broadcast on Thursdays, of course, and we certainly enjoy doing it. But James White's certainly a player that, again, my condolences continue to go out to him. But, he's a fine football player. From what I hear, he's a fine human being. A couple more games I want to get to, Steve. Indianapolis against Cleveland. Jonathan Taylor is emerging as a pretty good offensive threat for Indianapolis. And let me tell you what, Phillip Rivers, after that little hiccup he had in Jacksonville, the Indianapolis Colts are a team you might just want to pay attention. And I got to tell you another thing too, though, Steve, though. On Monday night here on the Sports Exchange, I had FIU play-by-play announcer A.J. Ricketts on the broadcast. And I'll tell you what, we had a good time that night too, Steve. And he talks about the legacy that T.Y. Hilton left over at FIU. And I saw one of the greatest college games I ever saw, a 57-50 FAU win over FIU, and T.Y. Hilton was lighting it up. I'll tell you what, don't sleep on the Colts between Jonathan Taylor and T.Y. Hilton. And as long as Phillip Rivers can go ahead and continue to play solid and not lose games with the Colts, this team could be a dark horse coming out of the AFC.
And the other thing about the Colts is their defense is legit.
Is that?
Yeah, their defense is really good. It's starting to really come together. And, they'll be able to shut down some teams. So after what we saw with Cleveland last week, I mean, that big 49-point explosion, this is one of the more intriguing games this week for me to watch because I think, you're playing a Colts team with that. I really like that defense of theirs. So we'll see how it all plays out. I'm going with the Colts in this, in a real close one.
Well, that's why I added it to our schedule, Steve. I'm going to come up with some pretty interesting football games. I don't have to have every one. I'm here to cherry pick to come up with the best games that we can so we can talk about it. But you know what? I'm going to differ with you this time. I'm going to drink the Cleveland Kool-Aid just so that you and I can talk about it next week. How's that? We'll see if Baker Mayfield can come up with a pretty good win over at home in Cleveland. I'm only going to give Cleveland.
Well, cheese curds for the winner.
There you go. Hey, don't worry. How many rounds of cheese curds do I owe you? I don't know. You don't have enough right now for me to give you the cheese curds, but don't worry. I will pay you back, Mr. Balestrieri. I will. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to go with Cleveland in this, and you and I will talk about it next week on our edition of the Sports Exchange. Fair enough?
Sounds like a plan.
So now we have something else to watch for over the weekend. I don't know what you're really going to watch, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good football game.
Yeah, I know that one. That's why I'm pretty intrigued by it. I mean, you think about Jonathan Taylor and, the kid out of Wisconsin. And, we talked about James White. So Wisconsin does.
The Wisconsin boy, yeah.
Yeah, now Ron Dane, unfortunately, never had as good a career as he but he was with the Giants. So it depends on where these Wisconsin running backs are going in terms of what kind of careers. But they have a pretty good track record for developing running backs. And we just alluded to one moments ago, Steve, with Melvin Gordon coming out of Badger land as well. So, but I'll go Cleveland, you go Indianapolis, and we'll go from there. All right, let's talk about the LA Chargers and New Orleans Saints somewhere, although my gut feeling is it is in Indianapolis. So let's go ahead and go deeper into this football game, Steve. You got Drew Brees again, so far it appears Justin Herbert doesn't look like Tyrod Taylor's coming back.
No, and unfortunately for Tyrod Taylor, I don't think there's any way they can give him that job back when he's healthy. This kid's just playing way too well at this point, and it seems like the offensive players on the Chargers are kind of warming to him. I think they're starting to believe in this kid. This will be another interesting game, but the guy that I think is going to be the big player in this, and he has been all year, Alvin Kamara.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think the Chargers have somebody that will stop him.
I agree. No, yeah, if Anthony Lynn were to put Tyrod Taylor in, that would be the equivalent of Wayne Fonts when he put Rodney Penn over Eric Kramer. And that didn't work out well when Eric Kramer, by the way, leads you to the NFC Championship game, only to be dumped in favor of Scott Mitchell. And I remember the biggest gaffe in Lions history at the quarterback position when they should have got Eric Kramer, a guy that won you a playoff game, and yet he's another trivia question for all you Lions fans out there. Who was the last Lions quarterback to win a playoff game? Eric Kramer. Who was the last coach to win a playoff game? Wayne Fonts. Okay, so getting to my point about what that means for here, that if you were to take Justin Herbert out and put Tyrod Taylor in, I think you're making a mistake. And, of course, New Orleans Saints, we'll see what happens. Drew Brees is still performing at a high level. I don't know what the status is of Michael Thomas, but you also have Emmanuel Sanders there as well. So, in Drew Brees we trust. I don't know how effective he'll be, but it should be an interesting football game wherever it's played for sure. So.
Yep, I think it's going to be a good one. Again, like Alvin Kamara is playing out of this world right now. And, yeah, I think Emmanuel Sanders might be primed for a big game this week.
Any other games or thoughts about this week that we have to look forward to?
I'm just hoping we see a full schedule this week. I mean,
yeah,
I think it's definitely up in doubt right now. I know the NFL is saying we're going forward with it, but what are they going to do if multiple players start getting sick again?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just hoping this is not the tip of the iceberg. This is the end of it, and we see all the games playing out, but I don't know. I'm still kind of teetering on this one, whether or not all these games are going to get played.
Yeah, I'm getting a little nervous there too, Steve. I mean, the reality of the situation, I think a lot of us saw this whole thing coming. When you have guys that are on top of each other, sweating face to face, this is a one sport of any of them for which if you're going to catch anything, you're going to do it in football. We've seen what's happened in the college ranks, how many games have dropped by. I got to tell you something about what Willie Taggart said today, and it was pretty interesting too. He said, Southern Mississippi's played 4 games. We've only played 1, so they've had an opportunity to look at Frank Gore Jr. 4 times. We've only played 1 game. You don't know what's going to happen this week, but he still has to prepare his team nevertheless. So, you have a lot. But I am starting to get a little bit nervous about this, Steve. I really am. And, we saw this with MLB, but I think the difference between MLB, though, and the NFL, you do have a lot less players on a roster than you do in the NFL. And
Yep.
to me, it's starting to get a little nervous. But, I don't mind taking a break anyways from the NFL so I can get more things done with what we're doing here. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the sport. It's not like I'm going to cover it much of this year on the premises because of obviously the reduced capacity at the press boxes. But you still enjoy it anyways. But the reality of the situation, this is a very, very dangerous virus, and a lot of people are going to get affected. And, who knows whether you're following protocols or not. There's still so many things about COVID-19 we just don't know about. We just don't.
Exactly. And, I thought the NFL took a very short-sighted approach to it this weekend. I hope it doesn't come back and bite them in the behind, but that remains to be seen at this point.
Well, you mentioned that the Monday night game between New England should not have been played against Kansas City. I mean, I can't imagine games being played on Monday and Tuesday. Then you're talking about player safety issues about recovery time too, let alone COVID-19. What about recovery time, Steve?
Yeah, exactly. And, that's with these Thursday night games, that it throws even a bigger monkey wrench into the mix, because some of these teams will play on Sunday, then they're expected to turn around and play on Thursday. And what happens if they have a COVID outbreak and you try to move? You can't move it to Monday now, because then it doesn't give them enough time.
You're talking about men that weigh between 250 and 350 pounds. And back when you and I were dealing with it then, if you saw a 300-pound guy, you knew he had way too many Big Mac McDonald's. Now 300 pounds is the norm.
Yep.
And make sure you go ahead and take those weights and do what you got to do. This is a very tough, but I share the same feeling for a lot of NFL fans. How much of this are we going to see until there is an ultimate interruption? And when the Tennessee Titans and the Las Vegas Raiders and other ones are doing what they're doing, I'd like to think I can be positive, but there's some things that you can be positive about. There's that old saying, Steve, there's perception, there's reality, and the NFL is drinking the reality Kool-Aid right now. And I love these Kool-Aid references. I don't know why. One of my other co-hosts here, Rick Curdy, keeps talking about the Belichick Kool-Aid, but the Kool-Aid thing seems to be resonating throughout this broadcast, and who knows what.
Yeah, well, Belichick has the Kool-Aid, and Cam's drinking the Kool-Aid. I mean, he's been saying all the right things so far this year, and so we'll see how it all plays out. Hopefully, he still says he's asymptomatic. So if he comes up with a couple of negative tests, he could conceivably play this weekend. Although I doubt it.
I wouldn't risk it anyways.
No.
But like I said, and I'm actually happy that Cam Newton and Bill Belichick are working together. I really am. You give the guy a coach and an organization with a lot of structure that they believe in you. And of course, Josh McDaniels, I think, is a wild card. He's one of the most underrated offensive minds in the league. I think his name will eventually be a hot coaching candidate again. Where and when and how long, I don't know. It's just a fact. So,
Exactly.
But anyways, that concludes this edition of the Sports Exchange. This is a Wednesday night version. My name is Scott Morganroth. Alongside of me across the state is Steve Balestrieri. We do this every week. We hope we give you enough NFL information so that by the time you watch your games that you pay attention to what we've talked about. You'll be able to see this thing visual here through the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. I'll get into all the other particulars in a moment. So, Steve, why don't you let everybody know how they can reach you and all the things that you do. I enjoy hearing what you do with the veterans. It never gets old for me, Steve. So fire away. The floor is yours until I go ahead and take care of what we have to do on our end.
Well, thank you. And as always, it's a pleasure joining you on Wednesday nights. This is has turned into a high point in my week. I look forward to doing our weekly get-togethers, and now we're doing it in video. We get to see each other, so it's a lot of fun. You can find me on Twitter at SteveB7SFG. I write for PatsFans.com. I also write for military affairs and national affairs for SoftRep.com. I do a podcast for each, one called Patriots 4th and 2 and Soft Rep Radio. So that keeps me off the streets these days. And you can always find me on Twitter or on social media. And of course, here on Wednesday nights.
And of course, I know you're on Facebook as well, right, Steve? I see you putting stuff up there every now and then too.
Yep. Yeah. I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook, but I do post stuff on there. And I will answer if anyone posts anything on, my timeline.
Yeah, I don't do a lot on Facebook except to promote shows, probably not more so before or after. Every now and then I do. I've really learned that there's other parts of social media that I find for which we get a bit more results on. So, and I got
Facebook is, and I might be talking out of turn here, but I'm really disappointed, putting it mildly, with Facebook because, our site, we have almost 41,000 followers on our Facebook page.
Okay.
If I post a story on Facebook, it only reaches 800 to 900. And then Facebook immediately sends me a message. If you would like it to reach 1,800 more, pay us extra money.
Yeah,
well, I have 40,000 followers for a reason.
right.
And it's, our message isn't getting to them. And that really ticks me off that they do that. they have that algorithm where they block it from going to people who follow you that want to see what you're writing. And that's one of the things that ticks me off is, they want you to pay for people that follow you to see what you write.
Yeah, I don't put a lot of stock in there. I only use Facebook, Steve, communicate with family members, friends around the country. And in some cases, it's actually been pretty good there because I've actually come in contact with other friends of mine around the country that I've actually gotten together with. So it's not too bad. And I got to tell you, without Twitter, I wouldn't have met you, Steve. So I had you, AJ Ricketts, the guy I mentioned earlier, and a few other people that I'm probably forgetting. But you and AJ, just a couple to name a few. But, hey, listen, you and I committed grand larceny connecting up on Twitter. You followed me and you didn't know what the heck you were getting into with that follow. You haven't turned you off yet so far anyways, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's what Twitter's for. And again, that's a medium that's has its moments as well. I try to stay off of it because right now politics it's just crazy over there on Twitter, but I post my football stuff and my military stuff, and I steer clear of the politics talk.
Don't blame you. All right, well, let me let everybody know how they can get a hold of us as well. If you want to hear the audio version of the Sports Exchange, you can do so on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. I'll give you an audio replay and a visual replay, okay, because some of you people will be watching it. And I also will quiz you on everything we've talked about. So we encourage everybody that's watching this broadcast to have a notepad and a pencil and paper and take notes, because you have the ability to do that because Steve and I are teachers on this broadcast. But you can do it all on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. In terms of social media, as far as we're concerned, Twitter at Tribune South. That's at Tribune South. You like our Facebook and Instagram, South Florida Tribune gets it done there. The YouTube channel for which you are watching this video, South Florida Tribune, please subscribe. And by subscribing to this channel, you'll also be able to see the Sports Exchange for which you are now, No Limits, which is a broadcast, which we do a lot of non-sports related stuff. Every now and then a good sports idea comes, but yeah. Sports Exchange, No Limits, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, Real and the Rare, Fantasy Football, which we do on Thursdays, and the South Florida Tribune podcast. Each and every show here does serve a purpose, whether it's a non-sports related broadcast or not. We want to make sure that we cater to everybody and not just a specialized audience. You can also go ahead and find our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. We have our media distribution partners who are kind enough to send us content, as well as the Motor City Monitor for our Detroit followers. And we also have our contributing writers as well. And and of course we have our broadcast on the southfloridatribune.com as well. We try to make sure it's a multifaceted website. And there is some news out there and some national sports, as well as some other useful information and weather. So we encourage you to check out the website. And you can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. If you have any ideas for Steve and I, feel free to contact us. We'll be more than happy to go out there and put them up there as well. We're certainly open books. We certainly like to get as much information as we can. You can contact us on any social media, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or whatever. We'll be more than happy to get your ideas. And if your ideas get brought on here, we'll even put your name on there and acknowledge where they came from, because we believe that we give credit where it's due. And of course, for you, LinkedIn, you can connect with me, Scott Morganroth, and I'll be more than happy to reach out to you and connect. So any closing thoughts, big guy? Once again, great broadcast as we always do, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to doing another one next week, and hopefully we'll be all healthy and here. Make sure we check on each other and take care of yourselves, folks.
Yeah, folks, take COVID-19 serious. Let me tell you, whether Steve Balestrieri and I do a football broadcast or not, as Apollo Creed once told Rocky, don't worry, Stallion, I'll think of something else. Don't worry. As long as I got this guy here right across from me, and we got me, we're going to entertain you, inform you, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. So on behalf of Steve Balestrieri, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange, and we will see you next week. Everybody, go out there, be safe, mask up, use common sense, and not only think of yourself, but think of the other people as well. COVID-19 is something to take very seriously, and if you don't, you're going to pay in more ways than one. So good night, everybody, and we'll catch you the next time on the Sports Exchange. Bye-bye.